Okay.
Oh, so the link is already posted in the Facebook group?
Yes, it is. So, hi, BFT. Welcome to our 12th Hangout. This is going to be a continuation of the discussion we started a few weeks ago on discrimination and bullying of LGBTQIA Bahamians or people in the Bahamas. Joining us again are Natalia and Rain. Today, Natalia is going to be moderating this discussion. And we have one of our newest BFT members on the panel today, Bernard. Um,
Hello.
and I trust it's going to be a very engaging discussion, just like the last one. The link has been posted in the Facebook group, so please post your questions and comments there. And I'm going to leave these guys to it now. Have a good discussion, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, BFT. I'm Natalia. I'm a 23-year-old student. Right now I'm living in the Netherlands, but I grew up in Freeport. I've been gone for about 3 years now. And on our panel today are regular BFTer Rain.
I don't hear any applause.
Woo!
Hello. So I was on the last, I don't, would it be called a discussion or hangout that we did? I'm back again. So it's just going to be basically a continuation, I guess, with Bernard, who's going to be bringing some new views. I see Kyle just joined, so hopefully he can get activated as well. I'm 24. I did not know that you were 23, Natalia. I don't know why I thought you were older than that. I'm older than someone. Feel good about that.
And
Okay, that's
next up
it
on
about
our
me.
panel we have Bernard.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bernard Farquharson. I am from Nassau. I was born and raised in Nassau. Um, I moved to Orlando in 2012 for school, and I've been here since. I spent some time in London, but I'm pretty much based in Orlando now in my last year in college. And yeah, I'm 21.
What are you studying, Bernard?
I'm a theater major.
Nice.
Yeah.
And is Khalil with us?
You said one sec.
Oh, okay. Well, let's get started a little bit with discussion then, and then we'll have introductions from Khalil when he joins us. The first question I had just to get the ball rolling today is, what has your personal experience been like as an LGBTQIA in the Bahamas? Let's go with Rain first.
Um, I haven't had any negative experiences per se, or maybe it's just that I never really felt bothered by any experiences that I've had. I would say that it's been pretty easy going for me mostly since I came out. I never had any, I'd say like discrimination or anything in the workplace. At all of my jobs, everybody has been pretty okay with it, um, which has been beneficial. I know that some persons, their coworkers or bosses kind of take issue with it, but I can't really complain. Yeah, you have the one or two homophobic comments, but even those have been few and far between. So I would say that my experience in Nassau has not been as bad as it could have been.
Okay, and my question to follow up with that is, if you don't mind sharing, how old were you when you came out?
I was 21,
Okay.
20 or 21, somewhere. It was in 2011.
Okay,
So
so you weren't experiencing much of this during your high school years, were you?
no, no,
Okay.
I wouldn't say that I was closeted per se. I just never really, it took me a long time to kind of realize that I was. Um, but I never had anybody kind of bully me or anything like that. Honestly, I was kind of a bully myself in high school, so me being bullied it was kind of the opposite way around.
Okay.
Oh, you were
And
the bully?
Well, I guess you can call it that. It wasn't like I never bullied anybody for their sexuality. It was more
Right.
like
You were the tough one.
I was a very much so a teasing, like to make jokes at other person's expenses, which
Right,
is
right.
kind of
Okay.
still me. But it was all in good fun, really. Like I've never made anybody cry.
Never want to play Call of Duty with you then.
So it's
Everybody would
a
play Call of Duty with me.
I have a question though. Do you think that the environment that you were in the Bahamas with so much hate against anybody that's different, do you think that made it take longer for you to realize that this is the way that you're different in, or did it just never occur to you during your teenage years?
It occurred to me, but it was more of a religious thing for me because I grew up very deeply in the church, and if you grow up thinking all along, well, okay, this is a sin, this is wrong, you kind of shun those feelings that you have. But honestly, I had feelings like that as far back as grade two. So, I mean, I knew, but didn't really accept. So I just thought of it as, oh, I just think that this woman, because I've been attracted to older women from like inception. So it was always, oh, well, maybe I just admire this teacher or I just think that she's pretty. But it wasn't until I got a bit older that I realized exactly why.
Do you think that this religious upbringing and this way that you felt about homosexuality and your thoughts, do you think that that's what might have made you maybe the bully or to lash out at other people?
No, actually, like I said, I wouldn't really call, well, in the setting that I was in high school, everybody was like all the persons that I hung around with were very much so like the class clown types. So when we make jokes, it's not like oh well, I can't ever remember making jokes at someone's sexuality. Like I knew lesbians and gay persons back then, and I never really picked on anybody for that. It was more so like little petty things like oh your hair is picky, stuff like that. It's nothing really serious per se. Well, maybe not to me and the people that I hung around with, but like when we made jokes at other persons, they usually laughed. So I wouldn't really say it was bullying in that regard. But bullying is not really something that I can define as someone who made jokes at people. Somebody who I might have made jokes about may have considered as bullying. So it's really dependent upon their perception, not
Okay.
mine.
Moving on to Bernard, do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, so
And
I came out. Sorry.
wait, what, 1 second. We've just met you. I don't know if you feel comfortable or not. If you want to share where you land on this rainbow spectrum.
Oh no, yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, I'm gay, and I've known pretty much forever, I guess. I kind of like really knew when I was like 12 or 13, and I was still living in Nassau. But yeah, I came out to like friends and stuff from like 16 onwards, but you never really stopped coming out. So, but I came out like publicly and to everyone on August 9th, 2013. So when I was 18. Um, yeah. So
How
and
were your
I
reactions around
guess
it from family and friends?
mostly positive, which was extremely surprising because I'd spent like 15 years, or not 15 years, 5 years, sorry, worrying, that it would be like really tough, or worrying that people wouldn't be accepting, or that, because I mean, with the atmosphere that we have in Nassau, um, yeah. So, but it was mostly positive. I think people who had negative views weren't vocal about it, or they just kind of decided not to, associate anymore. I think I suffered more growing up in the Bahamas, in the atmosphere. So I suffered more from like the things that I saw and the things that I was exposed to, rather than actual attacks. So I mean, just you hear "stop liking man" and stuff like that all the time. You hear like "Batty boy," things like that, and it's not directed at you, but it's basically directed at you. That was kind of my experience, because I was never really like a super effeminate kid, so I never, no one really ever targeted me for my sexuality, because no one really, I guess, assumed that. I mean, some people did, some people knew, but yeah. So I was never like personally victimized, but definitely these little microaggressions that you see like every day, though, that's what really like prevented me from completely like being myself.
And did it? How did it affect you, like emotionally? Do you feel like you were acting differently than you would have just to avoid sort of more exposure?
Yeah, definitely. I think we all do. I think we all kind of have our like suit of armor, our kind of our straight suit of armor. Our we kind of like carry our closet around with us, I like to say. So yeah, I would definitely. I dated girls. I spoke with a lower voice than I might have. I'm not. I mean, like, I'm pretty like I'm not overly effeminate. I am kind of effeminate. I'm pretty effeminate. I think, but I'm not like overly. But I would still like really like quote unquote butch it up, unquote.
Do you think
But
you still do that
yeah,
when you go home?
yeah. When I was home in the Bahamas, definitely. Even today, I find myself doing it too. Even though I'm out to everyone, I find myself still like putting on like a straight face for like cousins and friends and stuff. But yeah.
Okay. Up next, we have Khalil, and he will hopefully remind me of how to pronounce his name. But Khalil, let's have a little introduction, and then we'd like to hear about your experiences as an LGBTQIA in the Bahamas.
Okay, well, for starters, it's Kyle.
Hmm.
I'm 23 years old. Uh, I guess my experience would be a bit more intense than Bernard's or Rain's, considering that my household was hyper religious. Well, my adopted household was hyper religious, and so like casually they'd say really negative things about LGBTQ people, and for years I had internalized that.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't know any other. Uh, well, I was only vaguely aware, really, that I was different. I never identified it as being, you know, as a difference in my sexuality. It was more. It was more like I knew I wasn't what they were. I never imagined the whole uh, princess in a high castle, uh, household with a wife kind of thing. I used to get like crushes on. I didn't identify them as crushes at the time, but like random characters on TV that were male. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, but the whole time in my household, it'd always be like raining fire on homosexuals and this and that, and like my biological mother. Um, she's otherwise a really loving woman, but she'd be she'd just whenever the topic of gays came up, she'd be like, "Oh, I'm fine with them, but it's an abomination, and if my kids were ever, I would kill them, or not, I'm like, or if she didn't kill them, she had to love us from a distance. We couldn't be around her, that kind of thing."
I have a question. So, have you come out to all of your family?
The only family I am out to is my lesbian, bi like bisexual sister and my 13-year-old brother, who's really sweet.
Oh.
Um, he's he's obviously not comfortable ever like talking about it. Like if I bring up like, hey, I thought this guy was cute, he wouldn't engage the conversation like he would with when my brother talks about girls. So
Right.
like most of my school life, I grew up really reserved. I didn't want to, I was always afraid that if I opened my mouth, people would be able to tell that I was different. Um, so I always kept to myself. I was always paranoid of how people react. So it really um, restricted my access to developing healthy friendships and relationships. Um, I think the first time I started to, at first though, I thought I knew I had like a romantic attraction for guys, but I thought I was asexual. So I first came out as asexual, but with romantic attraction to guys to my friends. After high school, so 16 or so, and I think in some ways it cost me friends. Um, like after I told them, like, though only the males, I guess they just distanced themselves. I never got any outright condemnation, but the obvious shifts in attitude. Like,
Yeah. You have
yeah,
people shy away.
yeah.
But so you feel like it continues to affect you on the same level today?
Mm, It depends. I am a lot more open to date, not because I'm not still afraid of backlash or discrimination, because I have faced it, because I'm not effeminate, but in the Bahamas, if you do anything that doesn't coincide with the norms of masculinity, like me having long hair, like people question, but like generally, when I was in training at Bahamas. That was when I first decided to come out, because they did like a sensitivity training program. I'm not sure if Rain went through it too, but with the LDI guys,
Oh,
I came, yeah, I came out and I had to do it. I actually had to come out like 3 times because people thought I was joking. Um,
Wow.
and like, yeah, I basically decided to come because I was getting like a lot of advances from girls, and it was like the I'm a terrible liar, and I hate having to lie, and every time I lied, I felt like I was doing it because I was ashamed or I felt guilty or something. I don't feel guilty. I don't I don't think that I'm in the wrong. And I feel like being open creates more opportunities for conversation for people to understand, even if they never learn to accept it. Like they can't only hear their side of the story.
Yep. Okay. I'll share my experience a little bit, but it might be different because I have been in a relationship with Anthony for close to 8 years now, so it's never been something that I've had to talk about, which is why I wouldn't say that I am out to anybody except my friends and maybe even my close friends that otherwise it doesn't really come up in conversation. Not because I'm trying to hide it actively, just because I feel like at this point, being with Anne for so long, it makes no sense for me to spill up. And it's not that I don't want to be honest, but I just don't feel like I can deal with the reactions from my family, at least my immediate family. I feel like they would say that I'm just creating a mess out of nothing for attention, which is quite sad. But it's just the way I feel. That if I told my family that I'm bi, they would be like, okay, but what's the point? So it's something that hasn't really come up in conversation, but I think I've known it for a long time. And I would even say that I'm pansexual and not bisexual because I don't feel like my attractions are because of gender, but because of the person themselves.
Right.
And gender, but just to the person themselves. Like in high school, um, I was I didn't date any girls, but I always felt very comfortable uh, being a little bit more than friends sometimes with girls. And my group of friends was actually very open, so it was something that just occurred naturally, but it didn't have to have a label, and I didn't have to think about it for a while until I was older. And I felt that I could be equally attracted to a man or to a woman or to any person. But by then I had already been with Ed for so long that I was just scared of opening this can of worms for no reason. And it sort of stands at that point today, and more so now because I'm away from family and I'm away from the Bahamas and I'm away from everybody that we really know like that. And over here, it's not such a big deal. My friends here know it, but at home, not really many people do. Yeah, that's my case. So I don't think it really affected my life back home at all, but I think it affected me in feeling like it's something to hide or to not talk about or to not think about or to just avoid rather than just live it in full truth.
Mm. I
That's,
found that when I came out, I was able to see like who my real friends were and who were like the people who were actually behind me, and that was nice. Like, because even though you lose people, you know that the people that you still have left accept you for all of you. Because before, you had friends who you knew wouldn't accept you the way you are, and it was kind of a tenuous like balance between wanting to be friends with them and wanting to be yourself. Like, I don't know which is better, but
um,
I guess the
and
hardest part is that there's no going back after, so you don't know.
did you lose a lot of people in the Bahamas?
I didn't lose anybody I really cared about. I lost like random friends on Facebook. I had one person who like commented something on something I did and then deleted me. I had like there are people at my old high school now that don't talk to me, but I never talked to them really to begin with. So I I don't I think I gained more than I lost. I had people who like reached out to me. I had people who came out to me and like who are still
Bahamian people
Bahamas.
or people
Yeah,
that live.
Bahamian people, people from my school. So I think I gained more than I lost, definitely.
How about you, Rain? Do you feel the same?
Well, I actually didn't lose any friends,
Wow.
um, which was surprising. Well, I didn't lose any friends that would have stopped talking to me. I kind of cut back on a lot of the persons that I did have friendships with, just that I felt at the time that I had kind of outgrown them. So a lot of persons that I would have spoken to like on a daily basis, I don't really speak to much anymore. They reach out, but um, I feel like the connection is no longer there. Um, so I would say no. I didn't really lose many, or if any, actually.
People on an
Um,
individual basis are much more accepting than you think they are in the Bahamas.
yeah.
As a group, as like a group hive mind, they're not. But on an individual basis, people really don't care that much. I don't think,
So do you think
I
the biggest
agree.
problem is? Oh, sorry, Khalil, you wanted to say something.
unless they're
Uh,
religious.
no, I was agreeing with Bernard because I was actually surprised. Because at the point when I came out at Bahamar, I had already established like casual friendships with the people. Everyone thought I was
Right.
cool. I thought they were cool. So when I did come out, like even though they were homophobic to the only to the extent that they were ignorant of it,
Right.
but like me coming out didn't really affect our friendship. Sometimes they'd make microaggressive remarks,
Mm.
um, but it was never any outright violence, except for this one person who came to our group late. So he knew I was he knew I was LGBT before he got to know me. So one day he was sick. He looked sick or something at work, and I went up to him and I asked him if he was okay, and he got like angry at me and upset, and he was like, "What the fuck was that supposed to mean?" And I just kind of looked at him and tilted my head, and I was like, "You looked sick. I was checking to see if you were okay." And I couldn't, for the life of me, understand. And one of the people who I worked with prior stepped in and was like, she tried to like remove tension. She made like a joke of it, and then she explained to me afterwards that uh, like some straight dudes interpreted a guy talking to them like how they would talk to a woman, like like that's how some straight guys might approach a girl, like, "Hey, baby, how you doing?" Like that kind of thing. So he was basically afraid that I was doing to him what he would do to a woman.
That's
And
exactly what homophobia is.
Khalil,
Fear and
well,
screening.
Khalil, you
Sorry.
just used the term, and I believe that Bernard used it earlier as well. But you guys talk about microaggressions. Can one of you explain a little bit more about that?
okay, okay. I'll go first.
Yeah.
Microaggressions are basically as opposed to like direct offenses, they're more passive, and sometimes people do them subconsciously. It's like I catch the bus everywhere, so sometimes on the bus you'd hear this song, "Boom Bye Bye," in the backseat
Or
voice something, and like
Mm.
people will be there singing along.
Wait, that one?
Yeah, yeah, and people would just be singing along, and I'm just sitting there in my seat, gay as fuck, and 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 it's just like I wonder how they would feel like if they were in like the southern U.S., like some Confederate flag waving state, and it was like they were singing songs about lynching black people. Like
yeah.
they don't understand that it feels the same.
Like this
I
that
don't
song
think.
"Who Put the Pepper in the Vaseline."
Yeah.
Like I
I've
love
never
that song, but I hate
I've
the.
never heard that. I've never
You've
heard that. I
never,
don't think I
you've
want
never
to.
heard it? Oh,
Come on.
wait,
Who
that's
put
Mommy
the
Better.
pepper in the Vaseline? That one. It's a Tuka song. But I feel like actually now that I think about it, and it's something that I have thought about before, is quite a lot of our Caribbean music rails against anything other than the heterosexual couple. And it's
Yeah.
funny to me because they promote all sorts of lewd lifestyles and sin in every format. But when it comes to two consenting adults of the same sex or gender coming together, they lose their shit. It's
Yeah,
burn them, it's the hell with them, they're an abomination. And it's permeated throughout the entire culture in every aspect of it.
yeah.
I find it
I think it's
ridiculous. And
because I think it's
I
because all that
hate
lewd.
that the
Sorry.
microaggressions thing, but do you guys think that this comes more from lack of understanding, lack of information, and just thorough ignorance?
I
Or
think
do you think it's
comes.
willful?
I think this comes from a burning, like, singular desire to uphold your masculinity, which is what every man in the Bahamas feels. I mean, all these things, like, so what you're saying about the lewd, lascivious, like all these kind of disgusting, like sexual references that are fine, but then as soon as you have something about homosexuality, it's a problem. It's because these lewd kind of masochistic like comments, they support masculinity. They make you seem masculine, yet the other doesn't. It's nothing has nothing to do with lewdness, I don't think.
My question was more also about just the general feeling, not just the commentary that is made, but just the general feeling against members of the LGBTQIA.
Oh,
A lot of it seems okay. One thing I've noticed is when a regular Bahamian person, let's just say, completely stereotyping and completely generalized, meet
okay.
somebody who is bisexual, the first thing they start asking about is sexual things, about
Yeah.
actual intercourse and how it works. And it might seem really frustrating to have to deal with this on such an early interaction with a person, but through their lewdness, you also see that there's a lot of ignorance and a lot of information lacking there.
Hmm.
Do we
Yeah,
think that also this can be a huge factor into what's happening?
I, I think so. I think you could compare that to, when people ask about transgender people, and the first thing they want to ask them is if they had the change or if they've done the surgeries and all that, where their entire identity is based on what they've got down there or how they've altered their body or how much they pass. I think it's just this fascination with the unknown, or maybe kind of fascination often comes with fear. People have this like fear of the unknown. They have this like because they've been taught Khalil was saying from the beginning um, about Christianity's like unrelenting, like preaching against homosexuality. We have it in our media. We have like Stop Liking Men, those videos that are quite funny. But I mean, it's everywhere telling us don't condone that, don't associate yourself with that. It's wrong. Stick to what you know. And I guess that's just why people ask these questions. It's because they just can't wrap their minds around it. And when you can't understand something, it's scary, I suppose.
Another thing I've noticed though is that because all of us here were in our 20s, is that our generation has a significantly different reaction to these lifestyles than, let's say, one generation above us. When I hear conversations in family gatherings and if and just anything of this subject, when it's young people, they're like, oh, well, whatever, it's their life. Even the ones that dissent aren't quite so against it. Um, except in certain circles, obviously. But I feel like the older generations are the ones that are driving this fireball of hate against homosexuals. Um, do we think that there is an upward shift? Is it getting better?
I think it is getting a bit better than it was. And it's actually a lot of younger persons, especially in the Bahamas, that feel exactly the same way that the older generations do. It's kind of frightening, actually, if you read some of these comments that are on these social media pages, like your Bahamas News, first and
Oh,
foremost. You see that they make these posts about homosexuals and things like that, and then you see these commenters come out, and it's like homophobia straight across the board. It's getting better. I've noticed that the commenters are getting either more persons that are not as ignorant are starting to comment, and they kind of make you feel a little bit better and feel like things are getting a bit better. But I mean, the negative comments kind of take the precedence really on posts such as that. Um, but I think definitely the younger generation is better in terms of acceptance. Um, in comparison to the older generation. The older generation are kind of stuck in their ways. Their whole thing is, and the Bahamian society is very much so religious, as high as our crime rate is and things like that. Very much so religious on things that they feel matter. So your homosexuality, your immigration, and things like that. They're not budging on that. But other things such as fornication is, quite fine. They pick and choose which parts of the Bible that they wanna pay attention to and want to enforce. So,
Buffet.
yeah, exactly. Now, some families are better than others at handling these kinds of things. Mine is was pretty good, but I think that's because they kind of knew quite some time ago.
Yeah,
So it wasn't as bad as it could have been. But for some persons, it'll never be good. Their family will never ever accept it, which is
yeah,
crazy. But you can't help the family that you're born into.
Do we feel like there's a connection between lower education or lack of education and these sets of people that just won't change their mind? Because one thing I've seen is that, and I know it might sound prejudiced, but I did go to an international school, and I felt like the attitude in my school was, and in some of the other private schools, was completely different than in those maybe in public schools. Um, with people who aren't getting such a good education and such an international education surrounded by people from other places. Do we feel like this has a big role to play, or is it just in my imagination?
yeah. Having gone to an international school like you did, Natalia, I would say that it's probably more of a literally that international thing, because I mean the Bahamas is very religious, but Switzerland is very accepting. The Netherlands is very accepting. Canada is very accepting, and those are where most of my friends in school were from. Those are where most of the people were from. That being said, a lot of the people at these international schools, I mean, you still couldn't be out at like my school and not be talked about, not be like gossiped about. It's still like a big deal. They still say things like, "Oh, you like man. Oh, don't be a, I don't want to say the word, but don't be a this, don't be a that." So I think that's kind of it's funny because like we're in our 20s and we're at this age where we're in like or we have gone to like liberal arts colleges, or we've been out in the world and we've been surrounded by people of different sexualities, races, religions, and we're at this age where we're accepting, right? But I would say the teenage years are some of the least accepting years. The teenage years are when like anyone who is different in any way is targeted. And also then you get older and you've got the older generation. But I also think we live in I don't want to say gayer, we live in a queerer world now. Like we have people in the media that are gay and lesbian, bisexual and transgender and asexual and all these things, and they're not being focused on for it. I mean, you have people who are simply just being, and they are accepted for it no matter what they are. I think we didn't live through like the AIDS crisis. We didn't live through Stonewall. We don't have these preconceived notions of what it means to be gay. Because I mean, people who lived through the 80s and the 90s, they still connect us with AIDS. They still like see a very strong link between homosexuality and the AIDS crisis, and it's a hard thing to just be changed.
But
It's
do
a
you
hard
think
thing
it do
to
you
get.
think it affects men, gay men or bisexual men more negatively than it would affect a woman? Because I know that at least with the AIDS crisis, it was pinned on gay males.
Absolutely, it used to be called.
Not, I mean, I have also seen the reaction if I'm in a bar and there's two guys or one guy that may be perceived as gay, and he doesn't even have to be gay, he just has to be perceived that way. There is an entirely different reaction from the people around him than if I am making out with my best friend in the bar and then it's cheering on and then we're all okay with it.
Yeah, that points once again to the whole masculinity thing, I think that's what it is, and it's this I think, yeah, straight men are much more open to lesbianism than they are to homosexuality. That's for sure. And I think it's it's this idea that men are not supposed to be affectionate with each other, that men are not built to be affectionate with one another. So of course, to women, being affectionate is not a affront to their masculinity. So yeah, but I think
Well,
what you're saying, it's true. I think it's harder. It's tougher for men in that regard when it comes to AIDS. It's still a problem. I'm not saying it's not a problem anymore. It's blown out of proportion, definitely, but it's definitely affected. the way that gay men are perceived.
Rain, you wanted
Well,
to
I
say
think
Well, the irony.
yeah, I think along with persons, I think it has a lot to do with the sexual acts as well. Persons are generally very judgy
Yeah.
towards anything to do with anal sex. So that's really the only thing that most straight men think about when they hear that a guy is gay. That's the
Yeah.
first thing. If you speak to them, the first thing, oh, this guy likes to get this, that, and the next. And
Hmm.
it's like, but that's not even really what it's all about. Like, how is it that the first thing that comes into your mind when somebody brings
Yeah.
up their sexuality is what exactly they do in the bedroom? Like, it's so much more than that. I
Hmm.
get the questions as well. It's like, oh, so do you have this, that, or the next? And I'm like, why does that even matter? Like, when you say that you have a girlfriend, do people say, oh, well, how do y'all have sex and things
Yeah.
like that? It's crazy. So I think that a lot of persons, they don't understand um, the whole sexual aspect of it because that's the only thing that they think is different between um, what a straight couple does and what a homosexual couple does. But the thing
Right.
is that I always try to tell them is like straight couples have anal sex too. Like I don't want y'all to think that this is just something that only gay people do. Like there are a lot of straight people that enjoy that, and it doesn't make them gay or anything. It's just what they
yeah,
like to
I
do.
was
It's
about
I
to
don't
say
see a big
that.
deal with it.
In recently, even in pop culture, there has been a shift towards this is the cool thing to do now, or this is what guys want to do now. Why is it buggering when it's two men, but when it's a man and a woman, all of a sudden it's something that the guy desires and it's really nice and it's really okay?
They fight so
Where,
hard.
Exactly.
what is the fascination with buggering, and then you want to do the same thing to your girlfriend after talking all this shit? Where does that come from?
It's that control thing again. I know I keep bringing it up, but it's that assertion of your masculinity. If you can get, oh, this is very vulgar, I'm sorry, but I mean, if a guy can get into that place with a girl, then it's great. Like, it's I did it, like, want to kiss your muscles kind of thing. But if a guy does it with another guy, it's not at all that affection. Again.
Khalil, did you want to say something about this?
Oh well, so yeah. Earlier, I was going to remark on the irony of the whole stigma about homosexual men and AIDS when people are going off of American statistics. But according to the Bahamian statistics, HIV is actually largely a heterosexual epidemic.
Absolutely,
Um,
great point.
I think I think it's over 80% of infection cases are heterosexuals.
Hmm.
Now, mind you, there could be an error with the reporting because of the homophobia.
That's true.
People may not necessarily, said they're gay on a survey, mind you.
Well,
And the other
worldwide,
thing,
more sorry,
yeah, and the other
worldwide
thing,
with straight black women. That's
like
the
Bernard was,
prevalent.
like like Bernard was saying, the whole obsession with a guy getting fucked is that people just find the idea of a male forfeiting his masculinity, which is the most precious resource in the world.
Yeah.
Like they can't wrap their head around it. Like they don't. The idea of a guy giving up power, because people think that's all sex boils down to power, power and control. So they can't understand why a guy would ever do that. When a girl does it, it's always about. They think it's for the entertainment. It's always for the benefit of a man.
Right.
So
We've just had a great comment in the feed, and one of the members mentioned that hetero men, they jump straight to the sexual because they're afraid that gay men think about them in the same objectifying way as they do women. How much do we think this plays a role? Because in the Bahamas, women are very much objectified in every sector of life. From home life, school life, walking down the street life, even in the government, we've seen in the public broadcast the way that women are dealt with. How much of this is fear that they are being thought of the same way?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it's a valid fear that I think that's exactly why they're so scared to talk to someone who is gay is that they think that they think automatically that every gay guy is out to get every guy they see, you know. So
And At this point, what can we do as the community of younger people, vocal people who have a little bit more of an idea of what's really going on? What can we do to change these misconceptions that the Bahamian general population has?
Well, you can try to educate them. When persons start up with the ignorance, I usually am very quick to kind of curb that train of thought. Um, it depends on the person that you're speaking to. If you, and I guess people are more willing to listen to me because I am a lesbian. I'm sure if I was a gay man, it would be very, very different. Um, but in terms of my thing is, I always tell them, why are you so quick to assume that this guy is coming on to you? Like, what gave you that idea? Maybe it's that you want this guy to come on to you, and they usually get very offended. But the thing is that it's not the same. It's just because the guy is gay does not mean that he's automatically going to like you. Some girls, you'll find that if you say certain things to them, they'll feel that, well, coming from a lesbian perspective, they'll feel like, oh, you're trying to come on to them. And I pull no punches, and I am usually very quick to tell them, like, you're not even my type. And then they get offended, and it's like, they actually believe that because I'm a lesbian, I must be attracted to all women. And then it becomes, oh, well, what's wrong with me? Why am I not your type? This, that, and the next. And I get that all the time. And it's like,
Hmm.
just the same as you're not attracted to every guy that you see on the street. Why is that any different for me? I really don't understand the assumptions that these people make. But I try my best. I'm not a very patient person, but I try my best to educate them. But it's only so much ignorance that I can take. So I usually just leave them with whatever thoughts that they have in their head. But I mean, I do what I can.
I'm
Bernard,
pretty
how about
awful
you?
when it comes.
How do you deal with ignorance that comes your way?
I'm pretty awful when it comes to that. I like to play with people. I either say like don't flatter yourself, or I just pretend I am attracted to them, or I just like I really hate that kind of behavior, that kind of assumption that I am just like dying to get with you no matter who you are. Um, so I usually just play with people. But what I really should do is I should educate. I should tell people, if you are you attracted to every girl you see? No. So I obviously I'm not the same way. It's not something that just comes with being gay. I think though that this stereotype of gay men being promiscuous or being out to sleep with anyone comes from also the stereotype of gay promiscuity just comes from the fact that it's two men. You know,
Yeah.
I I don't want to make now a sexist stereotype, but biologically men are more inclined to be overtly sexual. It's just a hormonal thing. And if you have two guys together, if you have like, guys who are interested in men, it's just naturally going to be, they're going to be more sexual beings, I think. But then again, you have different you have exceptions to the rule. You have like a vast amount of people who are not overtly sexual, and it's not at all like a a, a sure thing. But I think that's where the stereotype because you also have the stereotype that lesbian women just settle down as soon as they meet each other, which is absolute
Yep.
bullshit. But I understand where
You
these
all.
stereotypes come from. Yeah.
We had a comment from Nicole, and she mentioned how social upbringing has a big influence on the way that people think. Even though some may appear to be accepting of one or two gay people in mass or as a group pushing for rights, many so-called liberated people will suddenly become closed-minded. How much do we think this applies to the push for rights and equality in the Bahamas?
I I think that it definitely holds true because there are a lot of people that aren't necessarily closed-minded, but when it comes to being activists and putting themselves out there for a cause that they can't necessarily relate to, the thought of losing privilege or people
Mm.
due to people assuming that they are associated with the cause they're pushing for sets in, and then the idea of losing that privilege is scary to them, and they're not going to put themselves out of their way for something they really can't relate to, even if they aren't well, if they're educated about it more and they have more empathy, you know, But for the average guy who just doesn't care about who you fuck or doesn't really know, isn't really aware of the levels of discrimination you face, they're not gonna put themselves out there for you.
Yeah. There's a
Okay,
difference between.
you
Sorry.
brought up a point about education, and we've had comments from Marlon and from Joey, and they're basically saying, would there be any benefit to a young Bahamians LGBT organization? And then Joey mentions that some of LGBTQIA members are trying to build a community, a stronger community for the purpose of advocacy and resilience. And he's insinuating that they've not been successful with this. Why do you think they haven't been successful in building this community that will fight the ignorance?
Okay, I'm very recently on the whole scene. I'm still not really on the whole gay community scene here. But from what I've seen in it, I can see why they would have some problems with organizing because one, even though these people are homosexual, bi, or lesbian, they are still one religious, and two, they did still grow up in a society that condemns them, and to some extent, they continue to condemn themselves. So they don't feel. A lot of them will tell you that they don't feel that they should be allowed to get married or do this, or they find the same sexist stereotypes like, oh, guys are just good for sex, that kind of thing. Two, like, there is a lot of drama and contention within the community. It's like because they're already a taboo and they've stepped out of a lot of social mores and values. They just kind of some of them just go the whole 9 yards, and they just don't give a fuck about fucking human decency sometimes. It's just they feel like that's their role. That's what they have to. They have to be emotionally disconnected from sex. They can't be. There's no point in a relationship to a lot of them, or
Okay.
maintaining.
What you're saying reminds me a lot about in one of our conversations months back, one of our members mentioned about their pansexuality or bisexuality. I can't remember specifically, but I do distinctly remember that this members felt okay identifying with it, but completely condoned any kind of action. How much do we think of that happens in the Bahamas? How much do we think that there's people that have these feelings, know they have these feelings, but will fight to the death against it?
It's such an awful thing. It's so repressive and it's so damaging to your psyche to do that to yourself. I mean, yes, homosexuality, the LGBT community is not at all just about sex, like not even close. But sex is part of it. It's our sexuality. Sex is a natural, healthy, amazing thing. And if this is who we are attracted to, and this is who we want to have sex with, you should be open to loving yourself and loving that you do that. And I think people who have recognized that they have these attractions, that's a good step. But to then be repressing yourself and telling and trying to be chaste, not for any reason other than that you don't want to express yourself that way, I think it's so damaging. And I don't mean to insult anyone who does it, but I don't think that it's healthy.
I think Khalil wants to answer a question we've had on the thread.
Yeah, in response to Joey's question, no, it's definitely not just uniquely LGBT community issue. But I'm just saying that, like the straight people who don't want to advocate because they don't want to lose privilege, straight passing homosexuals and lesbians don't want to put themselves out there and lose, that safety. They don't want to, they don't want to advocate and lose privilege, or there is straight passing privilege. A lot of people benefit from it. And it's a lot of work. People don't respect it. It's a lot of work, and people know that once you put yourself out there, you open yourself up to damage.
Violence.
It's not. Yeah, you open yourself up to violence, discrimination. There's nothing legally protecting our jobs if we decide to come
we're
out.
not included in the anti-discrimination policy at all.
Well, that's another thing that you've brought up, Khalil, that reminds me of something, a post way back. And it was two members of the LGBTQIA community, and on one side you had a person advocating for people to come out regardless of the reaction, and we have to be seen and you have to make yourself heard or nothing else is going to change. But then on the other hand, we have the person that says, I cannot put my whole life at risk in order to better the community in this way. Where do we find the compromise? Because it is still very dangerous for some people to come out. They can lose their jobs, they can lose their family, they can lose their position in society. But at the same time, without visibility and without showing just how prevalent the community is, we can't really get anywhere. Where do we compromise?
Well,
Yeah.
The thing is that it's not even really just an LGBTQ community kind of thing. I think that that's Bahamians all around. You'll see that whenever persons organize like these rallies for political reasons, or even something like domestic violence or the high crime rate, and they say, well, okay, let's have a march. Like, what, 10 people show up with pickets, and that's about it. It's just that, Bahamians do not seem to really like to put themselves out there. We are very much so a community that likes to straddle the fence. We don't want to be seen as one or the other to, kind of like Kyle said, not to lose any privileges that we have. So really, a lot of Bahamian members of the homosexual or community are pretty much closeted, and it's very risky for them to come out and take a stand, so to speak. We don't really have the advantage to do that. A lot of persons are very dependent upon their jobs,
Yeah.
and with the way that the unemployment rate is, you're kind of indispensable. So
Yeah.
if you want to make waves or ruffle feathers trying to get some traction for your cause, and you have persons above you that do not feel that you should be putting yourself out there, then you take that risk and you accept the consequences.
Yeah.
Now, for persons like me, for example, I have no risk. I'm just not the kind of person that would put myself out there, honestly. I'm not going to participate in any marches for any reason. That's not me. Now I
This makes a
understand
good
that,
point, Rain. Like Nicole said, Bahamians haven't really pushed for anything since equal pay. Uh,
yeah.
why do we think this is? And is this special to the LGBTQ cause that nobody will be vocal about it? Or do we just feel that Bahamians aren't quite vocal about anything other than in conversations in Facebook groups and political talk in person?
Uh,
Whenever it comes to
hey,
actually trying to have some action or trying to be seen and heard, nobody shows up.
Hmm.
Yep.
I
Is
think
it worse
that,
for LGBTQ issues?
I think
yeah,
if it's worse for LGBTQ issues, it's because we don't really make it as big of an issue. Well, it's not really even that we don't make it as big of an issue. It's that nobody really, the larger community does not really take it seriously. You bring up anything to do with a lack of equal rights, and the first thing is that, in the grand scheme of things, how important is this on the scale? We have high crime, we have high unemployment rate. It's a lot of things that people feel should take precedence over your little LGBTQ rights.
yeah,
Like, as far as they're concerned, be lucky that, like, I've seen so many comments where people say, be lucky that we don't just kill all y'all, just continue to be happy that y'all even alive. And it's like,
except that they do die. Gay people do die in the Bahamas. Like back when I first figured out that I was gay, when I was 12 or 13, that was the year that those three men were murdered. Do you remember? That judge and
Carl
then
Taylor
Carl
and
Taylor, the judge
Theophilus.
and the COB.
Yeah.
That was the year that I found out that I was gay. I always talk about that as the thing that made me go, oh nope, I am not coming out. Do you know? And at 13, I was scared to death. That like scared me to death. And I think that's also the reason why advocacy isn't a big thing here, and also probably maybe why it's not something to blame the LGBT community in the Bahamas for, but rather to sympathize with and to look for other avenues, right? Because we have a high crime rate. We have people who get shot for being witnesses to crimes. Like a teacher from Lyford Key, who I knew when I was in school there, was just shot dead for in her car because she was a witness to a murder and had testified. And if that could happen to someone like that, then why wouldn't it happen to a group of 5 people who are marching for LGBTQ rights? So anyone who does come out and advocates and marches and and just like puts themselves out like that is opening themselves up to all sorts of
Oh,
violence, hate, all these kinds of things.
Khalil wants to say something.
well, yeah. One more thing before I go. To branch up what Bernard was saying, one of the major issues that we do have here with controlling our crime is our scale. It's our size, our population. It makes it near impossible to curb retaliation-based crimes because there is no efficient way to have a witness protection program. You
Yeah,
can bump in, you can run into the guy that you pissed off like at the store. You can run into the guy that murdered your brother. Just going to school every day, like walking down the street. There's no way for people to distance themselves from the people that they don't like, really.
yeah.
Like,
One thing that
so,
also was brought up, Khalil, I see that you have to leave us, so I want to say thank you for being a part of the conversation this far, and this was your second time joining us. And
thank you.
thank you.
Okay, you're pretty.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, you guys.
And to continue the conversation, Marlon has asked, can the advocacy be started via a Facebook group to begin the discussion? Do you think that that's a valuable place to begin, at least as a safe space for people to ask questions or come out or say what they need to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, this right here is a huge thing for me, like, personally, this right here that we're doing right now. I never knew any gay people when I was growing up in Nassau, except for, I think, 1 or 2 people. I mean, obviously, I didn't know anyone who was out, is what I'm saying, right? Because, I mean, obviously, they're there, they're around. I think people have this notion that there's just no gay people in the Bahamas, so why should we care? Like, even when they were bringing up the issue of the anti-discrimination policy, someone asked, I think it was uh, Minister Turner. I don't know who it was. I don't want to say a name because I might be wrong. But some minister of parliament, they were asking them why aren't gay people included in the anti-discrimination policy, right? And they simply said because there ain't no gay people in the Bahamas. Like there's not like a large number of people who are gay. Therefore, why should we care, right? But obviously there are dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds, maybe even thousands of LGBTQ people in the Bahamas. It's not visible, and that's the problem we have here. And I don't think is a problem for the LGBT community, rather, because it's so hard to come out in such a dangerous and oppressive environment. I think it's a problem with the way that gay people are perceived. And I think if we could tackle that, that's what I think a Facebook group would be good for. This group right now, Bahamas Free Thinkers, there's like 1,000 people in it. I haven't seen one anti-gay thing on the whole site. You have people talking to each other and just trading ideas and not caring who's gay, who's straight, who's bi, who's whatever. And I think that's the first step is we need to foster this idea that the media has been good about kind of starting to get into, that really there's no difference. There's no big G on our foreheads or pink triangle on our shirts or like mannerism that makes us different from anyone else.
Okay, but one thing I've seen in other groups of, Facebook groups online in the Bahamas is that the perception is that gays aren't treated any differently, and why do they need special treatment? I've seen
Yeah.
that especially around the time of the referendum, when they wanted to introduce the words that you couldn't discriminate based on sex or gender. And I can't remember if that was the specific wording, but basically the whole referendum went to shit because it got twisted into this whole gay marriage and legalizing it idea, when it was nothing to do with that. How do we go about educating a public that we can see so visibly just anytime they see something about homosexuality jumps into the white man's gay agenda and how they're pushing this on us and they want everybody to be gay? Where do we begin the conversation with such a largely ignorant group? How do we bring it forward without it being rejected and called the gay agenda?
That's such a problem that we have these days is that they say, oh, but y'all ain't being treated any differently. Y'all ain't dying. Y'all ain't like you're fine. You have jobs. You have your life. You have whatever. You can spend money here, there, and it's crazy because it's almost like we've gone past equality. Do you know what I mean? We've like shot forward where we're now like gay issues are being talked about. But the Bahamas has somehow skipped that. We've gone straight from it not being a thing to it being over, and them saying, "Oh man, okay, y'all gay people, y'all exist, but y'all are fine. Like, relax, ain't nothing happening to you." You know, it's like what's happened here in America with the civil rights movement. We have the legal infrastructure down. We have all the the legislative stuff down for equality for Black people, but the social scene, the like economic atmosphere is just not at all equal, and yet the far right argument is always there's a Black president, Black people are allowed to vote, Black people are allowed to do this and that and the next, and like there are rich Black people, there are billionaire Black people. Why are y'all complaining? It's pretty much the same thing I think in the Bahamas, although not on such a vocal level. If that makes sense.
It does. It absolutely does. And oh, I've lost the discussion here.
Is Rain still here?
I'm still here.
Hi. Okay.
But you keep bringing up the point that we're not vocal, and I keep asking the question.
Sorry.
Which way? No, not against you. Just a question in general, and also to our viewers who are commenting. How do we bring about education? How do we bring about the idea that this isn't so wrong? How do we educate people to step away from their beliefs of buggering and Sodom and Gomorrah and turning into pillars of salt just for looking back and hell? How do we go about introducing into their brains that it's not how you think it is? It's not entirely about buggering. There's actually more to it than sin and fire and rainstorm. What steps do we take to educate people without putting the sensitive LGBTQIA members at risk?
Well, honestly, I don't really see how. I can't even think about how to tackle that, because the thing is that you have to understand it. A person's religion, once it's something that they hold very tightly onto. It's not something that you could just come and say that, well, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, you're interpreting it incorrectly. Which is largely where this whole issue came from in the first place. And their whole thing is, this is what I believe. This is what God said. You can't tell me that it's any other way. And if you do, then what did one lady tell me? She told me something about how I was going to be sipping on hellfire with Satan or something like that. And it was so hilarious to me, because I'm like, how did you even get to this point? Why is it that you can never have, how did religion even get to tie into this? And, it really is they don't really understand it until it kind of hits close to home, whereas they realize that, okay, one of my kids is a homosexual, or one of my close family members are friends. And then suddenly they have two choices. They can either let this basically ruin the entire relationship that they have with that person, and they make it as though this one little thing suddenly changes that entire person. And it's like, this literally has nothing to do with you, number one. This is something that they had to come to grips with on their own, and it doesn't affect your friendship in any way. But in regards to trying to get persons to understand that it's not all about buggering and hellfire and brimstone with these Bahamian Christians, is really tough. I don't know if you've ever come up against any of them in regards to this kind of topic, but it's you kind of almost give up. It's like, why even bother? They're never gonna change, and they will tell you straight up, you're trying to change my religion, you're trying to infiltrate my mind, this, that, and the next, and they don't have it. Trust me, they're not having it. So
What do you think the effect would be on social perception? What would the impact be if a prominent established Bahamian came out? Somebody who the country already loves and respects.
I mean,
blacklisted.
I don't. Yeah, that's my thought, Rain, is that I don't think that someone, no matter how high up or how loved they are, could survive that in the Bahamas. I really don't. I mean, I'm a theater major. My goal is to go into acting. I'm not aspiring for movies or TV, but I'm more of a stage actor. And I've often wondered if my sexuality and my openness would affect it, whether I would ever be able to come home and establish a career or even a name or like a, just even a life for myself here. Not here, sorry, in Nassau. Um, but and so I think that someone has to do it. Like I'm sorry because it's going to be hard and people are going to lose their credibility. I mean, this is a very strange analogy to make, but do you remember when Ellen came out, Ellen DeGeneres? She
Hmm.
lost her TV show. She didn't get hired for anything, and for years, like she had no work, and she was just not. Um, she really lost. Like she felt she lost part of her career. She got she was down on her,
Blacklisted.
yes. But then of course things turned around for her. She's Ellen now. But I think it just has to happen because after she came out, other people started coming out. You had who else did you have? You had Neil Patrick Harris. You had all these celebrities coming out, and these days coming out as a celebrity is just nothing. But the reason why it's now so easy for them to do it and for them to be accepted is because someone had to pave the way.
Yeah.
And but it's hard.
We
It's so
think that
hard
that
because
needs
I
to
always
happen in
ask
the Bahamas.
myself,
Do we think that there needs to be this icebreaker? Is it coming? Is it possible? Would it actually make a difference in the Bahamas? We just had a comment from Nicole saying that to change the Bahamian belief system on this issue would take a generation. The best way to begin with is with educating those whose way of thinking is still being formed, and that's young people. How much of this is true? Is this just a completely lost generation as far as gay rights go?
She's absolutely correct, honestly. I think for the most part, you'll find that a lot of persons, the mentality, um, and this is as it relates to equal rights issues, as well as things as simple as politics, the whole perception that the younger generation seems to have is they're gonna die eventually. And when they die out, then it'll be our turn. And we are more of an accepting bunch. And we are
it's
gonna
really
train our children to be accepting. So you'll find that you have social media blogs like your Twitter and your Tumblr, and you realize that the perceptions that people have are actually really changing, especially in the younger
yeah.
community. And so it kind of gives you hope is that, okay, yes, we're having issues, we're dealing with these older, stuck in their ways, not willing to accept any change in regards to this. But, it's kind of, okay, it's kind of morbid that, okay, we're waiting for them to die, but we really are waiting for them to die.
I mean,
So,
But a lot of the things that we have tied to the problems in the gay community and the LGBTQ community are the same things I hear when we're tying to every other problem in Bahamian life and Bahamian society. Like in politics, we're just waiting for them to die. In belief systems, we're just waiting for them to die. In
yeah,
separation of church and state, we're just waiting for them to die. How
yeah.
much waiting do we have to do? We've been waiting
now,
for people to die since the 70s.
Now, see, it's not that we're just sitting back and waiting for them to die. We're waiting for them to die, but their whole death is on the back burner. It doesn't prevent us or stop us from doing what we feel needs to be done to kind of move our issues forward. You can see that America has come a very long way. I feel like one day it was, you know, put these gays on a island or something like that. Then the next day
This is
gay
true.
rights, it was like straight across the board, and it's like, what? I never thought that Florida and Texas would have, had equal rights for gay persons. So, I mean, it's not that we're just sitting back and saying, oh, well, let's wait until they die to do something. It's that we're still waiting on you to die, but at the same time, we're going to be moving forward with what we need to be moving forward with. We're not going to wait for you to die and then say, okay, now it's time to get started. And so you take your little steps and you take your wins as you get them and you accept your losses as you get them because there will be losses. Like, for example, with that referendum that you mentioned, that referendum had absolutely nothing to do with homosexuality. But Bahamians, as simple as understanding the difference between sex, gender, and sexuality, they do not get it, no matter how much you try to explain it to them. They
All
have
that had to
had,
happen was someone had to say it.
yeah,
All that had to
someone,
happen was some pastor was like, "Oh, this
oh
here,
yeah,
this sex and gender thing, this means gay," and then everyone believed it. That's all that
and
had
it,
to
it
happen.
it suddenly was branded as the sissy law, and it's like, but this literally, like, how do you guys not understand the difference? And I remember it coming up in one of the groups, and I had tried, and they were just like, oh, they like to come with these big words to try and confuse us, and it's like, Sex is not a big word. It's literally 3 letters, and the definition is so simple. How are you confusing this with sexuality? And they're not having it.
But
So
that's
that's
another
why
thing
that got shut
that's
down.
another thing that I've also seen happening in the other groups is that any moment you're trying to have some sort of elevated, intelligent discussion with real facts, real research, all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, you went away, you got your education, and all of a sudden you come back gay. Why? Why is anything related to higher education, to open-mindedness, related to having gone away, having gotten an education, them ideas from foreign, them American ideas you're trying to push on us? Why is American ideas okay when it's about Thanksgiving and when it's about Valentine's Day and decorating the whole place with things that aren't Bahamian, but when all of a sudden it comes to your education and to push for equal rights, this lifestyle, this American lifestyle, it ain't gonna work for us.
Inferiority complex. A
Yeah.
lot of persons feel as though, you people who have your big degrees, y'all always think that y'all smarter than everyone. You know how many times have I heard this? I mean, countless times, and it's like that has nothing to do with it. You don't have to get a degree to understand these things. Like my degree has nothing to do with half of the things that I talk about.
Hmm.
So it's like, why do you feel as though, and it's not that we try to make them feel unintelligent. They look at your profile, they see, oh well, she has a bachelor's in this and a master's in this, and she works here, and oh, she must think that she's better than me. And I don't even know you to think that I'm better than you. But they create this whole mountain out of a molehill that didn't even exist. And suddenly it's, oh, she thinks that she's smarter than us. And then you'll be surprised at how many people agree with that. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And she's trying to
Hmm.
confuse us, and she thinks she's better than us, and she thinks she knows more. We're not stupid. We know exactly what this law is all about. And I'm like, you actually have no clue what this law is all about, and you're proving it. But your voice kind of gets lost when you have so much other louder, ignorant voices that speak up. And
What do we
eventually you just say, you
overcome
know
this?
what, forget it.
What do we do to get
Uh,
over these speed bumps?
well, Ian Poitier on the Facebook group just made a point about progressive pressures from other countries. I mean, we had, I think it was Fred Mitchell, right, who got media attention for talking about, for even just, oh my God, God forbid, like presenting the idea that maybe we should listen to America and their progressive stance towards gay marriage because, and this was the worst reason ever, right? Not because we deserve to be treated like humans, but because America, it has been cutting ties and limiting their interaction with countries that are not following their human rights positions, right?
Yeah, but
And
we've seen what's happened to Fred Mitchell ever since any comment that he made. Now he's definitely joined the bandwagon. Everybody has him written down, sign it, seal it, send it, that he's
yeah,
gay, and this is why he's for it. And not that long ago, and it actually went pretty unperceived in the media, in the Bahamian media, there was a vote at the UN at which I think Fred Mitchell made the vote for the Bahamas, and it was about equality regardless of your sexuality or your gender. And the Bahamas actually voted they voted pro equality. This
that's good.
completely went by unperceived in the media.
That's
And one thing we haven't realized, I don't know, I don't think a lot of people did see it. It was just like a little tiny blip in the radar. Is that the Bahamas is making internationally, it's making it seem as if we're going somewhere, but then you
mhm.
come back to us, and all of a sudden, yeah, Fred Mitchell's gay. Don't listen to him. Anything that he has to say is no longer valuable.
I hate to
There
bring up
is
his
no
name and like
compromise.
talk about him, but is he an ally? Like I would love to talk to him about this kind of stuff. I would love to have like a host a forum with him and talk to him about, you know, how we can move forward with these type of issues. But I worry that he will never get reelected after all this controversy. He'll never get um, politically acknowledged ever again.
Um,
Well, I think for the most part, persons already kind of lumped him in with the LGBTQ community. So even if he came out and said that he wasn't, as
Hmm.
far as they're concerned, he is. So, and the good thing is that even though they believe that he is without any real concrete proof, he still gets elected. Like Fox Hill loves him. So I don't see him not being reelected no matter what the scandal is. They don't You'll find that once you don't push the issue or you don't make it too obvious that you are, people are generally pretty fine with it. So if he had come out and actually say, well, I am a homosexual, things would probably be very different for him. But because
Do
he's
we
not
really
really,
think so, though? Do we really think that it would have permeated into the following elections? Because another thing about the Bahamian society is that we have 5-second memory. One day,
yes,
everybody was up in arms about the Haitians, kicked them out, destroyed all their villages, and then all of a sudden, it's no longer the center of attention. Yes, we'll have the post. Yes, there's talk about immigration. But all of a sudden, the shanty towns are no longer the #1 priority. All of a sudden, this is not permeating every aspect of the news. Do we think that it is possible that by coming out, more prominent people will eventually just get it to not be such a sting, but it will just be another blip in the radar?
Well, I think so. I think yes, but I think that's not the problem. I think it's not a problem if whether prominent people come out that it will make cause a change because it will. If prominent people came, if the prime minister came out, if like I don't know who else is prominent in the Bahamas really, but if all these people came out, if they even are gay, like it would be a huge thing. That's not the problem. The problem is would they? Would they be willing to put their lives on the line? Who is willing to do that? Who is willing to lose everything they've built up, you know? And I think that it has to be just someone has to do it. It has to be the young people, I think. It has to be people like us four, or well, I guess I don't. Well, yeah, he's gone. But like,
Um,
it has
we
to
got
be.
a comment from Joey, and he was responding to something Rain said that it felt like it was overnight. That one day it sent them all to an island, and all of a sudden there's gay marriage. But his comment was that it didn't happen overnight. It happened this year, but the fight started in the '60s.
Oh yeah, no,
Um,
he's totally right.
yeah, I agree with that, but do we really think that it will take us 50 years to get to that point? Or can we actively push for more? What
Oh
can
no,
we
it's
do as the 20-somethings of the Bahamas, inside or outside the Bahamas, to make it better for the up and coming youth who are struggling with this, the people that have been living there for years and are struggling with this? What is our action to make this better for everybody?
well, I was talking to my mom about this because she's very supportive of me, and she's
Yeah,
very supportive of yeah. Thank God, right? I mean, like it's a blessing. Uh, whatever kinds of blessing you believe in, it's a blessing. Uh, but she is she was telling me that because she wanted to answer this question. I'm talking to her right now, and she's like, "Oh, I can answer this." And she said that it's got to be through personal like discussion, personal encounters, because uh, it's it's really hard to hate someone for being gay when you already know them and you talk to them face to face and they're just like they presenting themselves as just a person with different values than you, right? That sounds very like kumbaya, hold hands kind of thing, but it's true. I think that's the way that I've been able to foster and maintain relationships with people I know, like friends that I've grown up with. Some of them are, yes, they're homophobic. Yes, they don't agree with homosexuality, but they just see the Bernard they always knew, who, oh my God, he's now gay. Has this changed anything? And they have to like come to the terms with the fact that no, I'm still the same guy I always was. I'm still the same person. I just, you know, I'm part of this group that they before now probably didn't know anyone who was gay. They didn't really know, and I think that's how we have to do it. I mean, that sounds really difficult, and it's not like we can go and meet every single person in the Bahamas and convince them that we're good people, but I think it's where it has to start, and I think it's these grassroots movements like the ones that are happening now, like BFT is a great example of people just taking it onto themselves to put forth the fact that they're free thinkers who want to like put aside dogma and put aside preconceived notions and actually talk about what people are actually thinking. And I think we have to create these opportunities for people to advocate in any small way that they can. So my best friend and I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot. My
No,
best friend,
it's fine.
he's a sociology major. My best friend's a sociology major, and he's a LGBT activist, and he wants to be a community planner when he grows up. And he grows up. I meant graduates. We're 21. I'm sorry. Um, yeah. Oh, sorry. My mom just said, but the more people we befriend and influence and teach to love, no matter what, then it will become a good kind of social contagion. And
I
this is
wanted to
true.
say something about that as well. And just to answer my own question a little bit, I did want to say this. It's that one of the biggest ways that I think we could make it a better situation and more accepted is that not only are we advocating ourselves as members of the LGBTQIA, the dot community, it's also very important to get the people around us to be vocal about it. And
Yeah.
then, it has the multiplier effect that the more people that are okay with it, accepting, they need to make their voices heard as well. Because
Absolutely.
one thing that the Bahamian population is great at is jumping on the bandwagon.
Oh
We're
yeah.
very good at going with the flow, and if the majority is saying this, then this is what we're going to go with. And I see that that's also the effect on threads on maybe Bahama News Mabe, is that once you see the way in which the general population is leaning, you're going to have very few comments dissenting.
Yeah,
And I
definitely.
feel like once we get our community, the ones that are comfortable with being vocal, and then the people around us who might be straight, might not be, might just be undefined, but are perceived as straight. I think that once there is an overwhelming support from cisgendered straight people, I think that the Bahamas will also begin to have a shift and say, look, it's not just to hell and fire with all of them. There's
Yeah.
a shift and it's being more accepted.
I think that when it comes to the religious atmosphere in the Bahamas, that we're not going to find ourselves changing a vast majority of people who hold these staunch Christian beliefs against homosexuality. We're not really going to change their minds this way. This is the way to get people who are on the fence, who are scared to voice their support, who are scared to accept people that are gay because they simply haven't met them. I think when it comes to Christianity, the same methods will work, but they have to have an added level of, you know, of conversation where we sit down with people who are Christian and talk about um, religious hypocrisy, talk about how there are things in the Bible are that are um, that are followed by the majority of Christians, and there are things of the Bible that majority of Christians don't even know are there. I think that that's a conversation that has to happen peacefully, but it's definitely going to be harder, I think, because that's probably the problem we're going to face with this kind of movement. And like I was saying earlier about my friend, he and I were talking about this idea that I had where it's kind of like a social experiment kind of thing where it was going to be me, but I didn't know how to get this started, but like I would stand like in Rawson Square or something with a sign that said "Meet a gay person," kind of thing, right? And people would just come up and talk to you, or like you just kind of it was such a like a can't like the idea just came out of nowhere, and it was just like such a broad idea and kind of like not safe at all. But we talked about it, and we kind of developed it into like an actual plan where we would get an NGO, like an outside LGBTQ organization involved, have pamphlets, make it an actual, get funding, make it an actual legal thing, make it a big thing, have it connected to some sort of support system. Um, and I think that it's these kinds of things, those kinds of like grassroots, meet the people strategies that are going to affect the most change. Because we can talk all we want about how someone needs to come out. We can talk all we want about how someone needs to have a rally and have a march. But if we're not doing it, then who's going to? Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And yeah.
Do we think that having laws would make a difference? Having laws on the books about equality and discrimination?
Definitely, absolutely. Right now, our consent laws are completely homophobic. The age of consent of sexual consent for straight individuals is 16, and the age of consent for homosexuals is 18. We legalized homosexuality. Homosexuality was illegal up until 1991. That's 3 years before I was born. Like
I believe, was it actually homosexuality or was it the act that was illegal? Because
the
I've
act
seen
of
people who
homosexual.
did,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's a good distinction to make. Sorry. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. But definitely, I think if we had laws in the books, if we included LGBTQ people in the like, list of people protected by the anti-discrimination policy, then that would be definitely a good stride because then people would have legal support. People who wanted to advocate or people who wanted to fight for their rights would have a legal um, laws to fall back on. Like we wouldn't be subject to discrimination without protection.
Okay, sort of to play devil's advocate here on my own question, what do you say to the person that says, well, we already have laws on the books that aren't followed? How do you ensure that a police officer is gonna fill out the report when somebody comes in and says that I've been discriminated against because I'm gay or lesbian or transgender?
I would say that may be true, but that is definitely not a reason not to have the law.
Right.
That's crazy. Like, oh, it could never be enforced, so we're not gonna have it. Like,
But
I don't know. Sounds,
I think that the most important part is education. As
yeah,
far as actually making a change in the way that gays, lesbians, homosexuals, everybody in the Bahamas is treated, is it needs to come from an inside of the person more so than from a law that the government makes. I think that the attitude needs to change before we put a law there, because it might actually push the opinion in the opposite way. That now, just because there's this law, now we're going to go against you, and now we're going to be loud, and now we're going to lash out. How do we come forward in that way? How do we move forward? As far as, if we create a law, it could go the other way, but we also need to educate people before there's a law. Where's the meeting point?
I guess this is also a question of whether government should be involved at all or not. Because if we're talking about education on a wide scale, then that is a government issue. And that is, do you mean like education as just like teaching generally people about the LGBT community, or do you mean
Yeah, yeah,
like in schools?
absolutely.
Because it's
And
not
also
mentioned at all
bring it
in
in school,
schools.
because I saw on one of the other groups that there was an assignment, and in the assignment it was asking about different kinds of families.
Yeah,
And everybody was up in arms that this would even be included in their children's education. However, it wouldn't not be beneficial to teach kids about different kinds of families and different kinds of people. And maybe a child grows up knowing, oh no, I am not a sin and I am not abnormal. This is something that other people experience.
absolutely. And that goes for all types of families, not just LGBTQ families, because we have a huge epidemic, not epidemic, I don't want to say epidemic because it's not a bad thing, but we have a huge instance, a phenomenon of single parent families
Yep.
in the Bahamas. And for it not to be encouraged to have children learn and have their family orientation like represented in school, that's just, I think it's abominable. You
Yeah.
know?
How do we get it there, though? I mean, we still have public schools teaching strictly Judeo-Christian religion and
Well,
excluding everything else.
that brings
Where,
us back to
where,
law.
where do we push? Who do we go to? Who do we send letters to say, let's get education neutral and let's include every type of person and let's protect everybody?
Minister of
What are
Education,
we going to do?
Gerald.
Because
I
now
mean,
we have
Yep.
to, we're reaching the end of our discussion, and we've talked a lot about our experiences, the things that do happen, and how do we think we can change. But where do we go to from here? We've had these excellent chats, we've had these excellent hangouts, and we're getting more opinions in, we're getting more questions, we're educating people. How do we take it on the next step?
hmm.
Do we create groups for young people to join? Do we make ourselves more visible? Do we not make ourselves visible? Do we create websites to educate people? What do you think we can do at this point? And this also goes to the members who are watching and commenting. I would love to hear everybody's thoughts on what's the next step that we can take to make this better situation for all Bahamians.
I think we have to start. I think we have to stop talking, and I think we need to go out, engage in small groups. We need to meet. We need to plan safely, absolutely safely. We need to. My mom is feeding me this. This is what she says. Actually, my mom is planning to have an LGBTQIA group for young people come the new
Hi, Bernard's mom. Do you mind
year.
your comments on this thread so that all of the other members can interact with your thoughts as well?
Yeah, she should. Because my mom, when I came out, I mean, she had like a little adjustment time, but then she was super supportive. And a few months later, she reached out to PFLAG, Parents for Lesbian and Gays, to talk to them about how she could get something like PFLAG started in the Bahamas. And I think that would be amazing to have, because I think a lot of the time we focus on the problems of LGBTQ people, and absolutely we should, because those are the people who stand to lose, who are committing suicide, um, who are in danger. But I think their first like the first barrier we face as LGBTQ people are our parents, and parents of gay kids who don't know anything about gay people, who were raised straight in Christian families. They have no tools to deal with this like huge change in their lives. And I think if we had that kind of organization, Parents for Lesbian and Gays, we could reach out to parents, help them to find people who are going through the same thing, give them resources, things that they can do. So I think that's what we need to do. I mean, I think we need to just start having small groups. I come back to the Bahamas for a month this Christmas, and I think it would be great if we could have a meetup of people in the Bahamas. I know that there's 1,000+ people on BFT. If we could have like an actual meeting to just meet and maybe not even to come up with any plans, but just to see that there are people, there are a lot of people who are supportive of each other and who want to affect change. I think we just need to start meeting.
That
There
reminds
actually
me,
is a
I would like
meetup.
to plug for the admins who are not here right now, is that there will be a social on
Yeah.
December 27th, I think, and this is for all the members watching, all the members commenting, and for Bernard and for Bernard's mom. There will be a meeting of the minds of similarly minded people in the Bahamas, and there I'm sure you can carry on the conversation in person.
Yeah.
But I
I'll try to
think
make.
we have run out of time for our hangout now, and I would like to thank Rain. I would like to thank Bernard and welcome you again to BFT. And I would like to thank Khalil for his participation for the time that we had him. I do believe that it is very important to have these discussions, to broadcast these discussions, for them to be seen more than by just the people who are already thinking like us, but also for them to be seen by 12, 13-year-olds who are starting to have these thoughts and they're starting to believe that they're an abomination and they're going to grow up, you know, repressed and not being themselves and not knowing that there's somebody there that you can talk to. So I do believe that we are little by little making a difference, and there's always more that we can do. And we can keep on the discussion in this group, on the thread. We can start new threads, and we can keep moving forward with equality for every member of the LGBTQIA and every Bahamian.
Definitely.
So,
Thank you for having me, and
my
it's great to find
sense,
something like this. Yeah.
and I don't know. I don't know if I should wait for our admins to sign us off. Kendra, what do you say?
Yeah, she said she'll end it.
Oh, okay. So she's going to end it. So thanks for watching, everybody, and thank you for the ones that are going to watch later. Thank you for the questions in the discussion. I hope it keeps going, and it was lovely to see all of you. Bye-bye
Yes.
from me. I'm signing off.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.